Friends, in our continuing series of conversations with persons who have achieved what they set out to do, who have been success stories in their chosen fields of endeavor, who have been not just persons that executed what they were tasked to do or what they tasked themselves to do, but who thought about what needed to be done and then put in place the building blocks of that exercise and saw it through to its completion. Those are the people that we bring to you because we want you to understand what ticks in the minds of these persons. We know what they've done, we know what they do, but maybe we should get an idea of how they do what they do. And in our conversations so far, we've had people from diverse streams. I think the commonality, as you would have noticed, is that they're all achievers with a capital A. And today, my guest is a former central banker, a career central banker, if I may call him that, because decades of being a part of the Reserve Bank of India, but one who has seen banking through several lenses, not just the lens of a central banker, but as a chairman for 5 years of a large public sector bank, as an advisor now to banks on various matters, technological, regulatory, and several other aspects that I don't want to spell out in detail. Someone who has a good understanding of the role that technology plays in the banking space and would like to push that forward to see that customers like us find banking far more easy and a far better experience. Let me welcome, without further ado, Mr. G. Padmanabhan, former Executive Director of the Reserve Bank of India, and at a personal level, somebody that I have known, that I have admired, that I have respected, and somebody that I'm fond of. Welcome, Mr. Padmanabhan, to the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that gracious introduction.
Okay, let me straight away get into some of the early questions. I know that you are a postgraduate in economics and an MBA. Why did you choose to go into central banking? Was that a career choice of your own? And I'm sure that you and I, you're somewhat younger than I am, but that we had a few choices, even though we didn't have too many when we left school. You had to be an engineer or a doctor. Otherwise, it looked like the rest of the world was closed. And now we discover that these are two of several hundred options available to school students. But once you got into college, you did well, graduated with a good degree, a postgraduate degree. There were several options that opened up. Why did you choose to be a central bank?
Well, Mr. Damodaran, very interesting question. I think, first of all, I think probably we have to take a step back and ask me, why did I choose economics at all? Because my father was a professor in chemistry, and I think they considered it blasphemy when after my SSC, where I got reasonably good marks to get into any kind of those days, say group 1 or group 2, I decided to go into the group 3, which was economics and history and things like that. Okay. Somehow or other, I had a fascination for history, economics, so I thought I would do much better rather than following the footsteps of my father, who was a chemistry professor, or my grandfather, who was a mathematics professor, basically in some college. So I completely broke away the tradition at that point of time and then moved into this. Now, the question is, what made me choose central banking as a career? Interesting, but probably something that I don't know whether you would like to hear. One of the disappointments that my father had was that I never even wanted to attempt for the administrative service. Now, it's a different matter whether would I have made it or not, but somehow or other, given the political situation in the state which I grew up, where I saw the best of bureaucrats being, sort of ordered about by the politicians, somehow or other, I decided that that's not a service which is going to be something which I'll be very fond of, or whether I would survive without too much of bruises. I mean, it requires, I think, people of your stature and mental, I think, to go through that kind of an experience. But I was somehow rather apprehensive. And I stayed in a colony where I was probably surrounded by 2-3 officers who were working in the Reserve Bank of India. And the Reserve Bank of India was just about a stone's throw distance from where I resided. And that the what we call the Belhaven in Trivandrum, which was a earlier palace. And that was actually the playground for all of us when we grew up. And then later it was purchased by the Reserve Bank of India. So these guys going with those cute looking bags, going out for inspection, this was a fascination for me. I mean, said, okay, now probably this is one institution which I look up with awe and which I should try and get into. And luckily that succeeded. I mean, I get into the institution initially in the clerical cadre, but I think within less than 2 years, I directly wrote the grade B examination and I got a good rank, and then I directly joined as grade B director too. So that was the background, but I think that's it. I don't think that I had anything beyond that as at that age as to why I should be joining a central bank. But these two things I was very clear. One, what I didn't want to do, and the other one was what I said, I am fascinated about, let me give it a try.
Interesting you say this, because, when I qualified for the civil services and I had to choose, we had to answer 2 questions. One, would you like to be considered for your home state? Second, if not, what are the choices that you would like to have? And I don't think we even had choices. It was only consider the home state or no. That was the only thing on which I consulted my father. My father was in the judiciary, not in Kerala. He was in Chennai. And he gave me very practical advice. He said, you have a maternal uncle who is a very strong member of the Communist Party. You have a paternal uncle who is very strongly aligned with the Congress. So you better write no in capital letters for whether you want to be considered for your home state, because whoever is in power, you will get it. So you might as well go somewhere else. And I think his reading of the situation was very good. Luckily for me, I chose not to get into that. But in some sense, it's interesting where you had your playground, that also became your institution, from Khel Bhumi to Karma Bhumi in a sense, right?
Exactly.
This is very interesting.
No, Mr. Damodaran, if I may say one, see, probably I was a rank holder in my BA Economics and MA Economics, second rank, and I topped the university. Probably, I think you will find, I don't know how many examples you find where a rank holder in economics history not even wanting to go into a particular service, which was at that point of time, I think the most coveted one. I mean, during our times, there were very few jobs that was most coveted, but somehow or other, I did not want to do that, and I stood by my decision.
I think you chose very well. I had the privilege once, interestingly, in Reserve Bank of India's Delhi office, where I was for a period of 11 months during Bimal Jalan's tenure. He asked me to look after the restructuring of 3 weak public sector banks and located me in that office. And President Kalam, he later became president, but then he was a member of the central board of RBI. He had come there, and Yashwant Thorat told me, why don't you introduce him? No, I didn't know too much about him, so I read up something. And one of the things that I said then, and Kalam held me by the hand, and he asked me in Tamil, why are you sharing all these things with them? Because he had applied for the Indian Air Force and didn't qualify. I said the Air Force took a great decision, because otherwise they would have denied us a great scientist and a great political leader. So perhaps not opting to go into the IAS gave us a good central bank. I think